is Chef Kevin McGee. He is an acclaimed chef focusing on plant-forward cuisine. He's a speaker, executive director of the Urban Oak Initiative, a nonprofit advancing food equity, entrepreneurship, and community wellness through the power of plant-based food. Kevin is a longtime vegan, 30 years, I understand, and Aspen Food and Society Fellow. Kevin has dedicated his career to helping people transform their lives by making healthy, culturally relevant food more accessible. And through his work, he mentors food entrepreneurs, advocates for food as medicine, and champions innovative approaches to building healthier and more equitable communities. So, Kevin, welcome. It's so nice to have you here.
Sounds good. Good to be here. Just a quick clarification. I haven't been vegan for 30 years. I've been primarily plant-based for 30 years.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to upset any vegans. You know, vegan is a whole different category there. So I just want to make sure I make that clarification.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So plant-based is definitely different from vegan. So you do eat dairy then?
On occasion, I call myself 90% vegan, right? So I'm primarily do that. Sometimes, you know, I do end up doing some dairy or something like that if I'm out somewhere and I don't know what's in an ingredient, or I'm at a tasting or something like that. But for the most part, I stick to plant-based foods.
Right. And maybe you can just tell me how you got interested in being a chef and then in plant-based.
Yeah. So, you know, awesome. So, you know, it happened around the same time. Ironically, I had shortly graduated college. I started my college career in banking and finance and wanted to do a transition. So I started working at different restaurants to gain restaurant experience. And in the process, my roommate at the time was trying to become, I believe, a vegetarian, and he would bring home different sorts of plant-based foods or vegetarian foods. At that time, plant-based wasn't the term. And I would just try them and taste them as I was becoming more curious about, you know, culinary and types of foods and flavor profiles and things like that. And I found that I just really liked the taste and the texture of some of the vegan and vegetarian foods that he brought home. And then after eating those for maybe on and off for maybe a month or two, I started seeing some very good results with myself that I hadn't planned on. You know, I'd used to be troubled a lot with colds and sore throats and fatigue and things like that. And once I'd started eating the vegetarian and the plant-based foods, I started to see a noticeable change in my health and my energy levels. And so that was pretty much it for me. And so I became a vegan at that time, actually a vegan for about 5 years until I was about 30. I got married, had children, and that sort of switched my eating preferences a little bit. You know, we kind of go the way that the children go. I like to tell the story. My children didn't like the vegan pizza so much back 20 years ago. You know, it wasn't quite as good as it is now. So we added back in pizza and dairy and some things like that over the years. And now, as my children have grown and my family has grown, I'm returning more to the, you know, plant-based, ultimately, you know, vegan lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been kind of a really interesting journey.
Exactly.
For you.
Back and forth. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know you're so much a part of the Atlanta community, and I wanted to just switch to Urban Oak Initiative. I know you said food is one of the most powerful tools for transforming communities. How did that belief shape what you're doing at Urban Oak Initiative, and how has the organization evolved over the years?
Yeah, awesome. So Urban Oak Initiative originally was started in 1997. Then it was called Helping Hand Ministries. And it was a nonprofit that my grandmother, Robbie Towns, started in a small rural agricultural community in Missouri, which is where I was born and raised and still have homes to this day. And so from there, it existed for about, 10 years. And my grandmother transitioned, and then my mother took over the next leg of it. And then I took over the final leg back in 2017. We've always been focused on human service issues, and we've always been focused on children and families and food. We've done food service programs over the years, summer feeding programs. Currently with Urban Oak, as we've changed the name over the years, about 3 years we changed the name and relocated here to Atlanta in 2019. And now we focus more on helping educate youth and their families on the benefits and the health benefits of eating more plant-based foods with the goal of helping to reduce a lot of the chronic illnesses like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure that we're dealing with right now.
And have you seen a lot of results in sort of improving the health of the community?
Yes, so I mean, I think we've seen a lot of anecdotal results. I mean, we haven't done any studies or been commissioned to do any studies, but we have seen through firsthand accounts and testimonies that they have experienced better health. The one of the amazing things about food is that when you eat food, there's always almost an immediate reaction, right, to the body. If you eat something that doesn't taste good or isn't good for you, your body sort of immediately gives you,
Right.
something in the form of a stomach ache or, et cetera. The same is true when you eat healthy, right? So if you've been eating maybe a less than optimal diet for a long time and you start eating a better diet or you eat something healthier, you're going to feel the effects of that, almost instantaneously sometimes. So we've had many people at the pop-ups and things that we've done over the years that have said, hey, oh, wow, I had your food yesterday and man, I feel better today. I don't have as much bloating. I don't have as much, acid reflux, so on and so forth. So we've had some wonderful results, throughout the years of the communities here around Atlanta.
And it's amazing that you're the third generation carrying on this mission. So it's really part of your DNA. Um,
Indeed.
I want to turn to the food studio because that I think is your newest development. And
Yes.
you're developing it to be one of the first plant forward commercial shared kitchens in the nation.
Mhm.
So this sort of goes to the cooking aspect and
Yes.
people learning how to cook. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so we saw several years ago as we were looking for opportunities to continue to do what we're doing in our neighborhoods, that in the particular neighborhood where we're at in Atlanta, a neighborhood known as Pittsburgh, it's a food desert, low food access, no stores, no fresh and healthy food, and so we were looking for ways to bring that to the community by creating just first and foremost just a community kitchen. But as we did more research and really thought amongst ourselves, we thought that it would be even better to improve the level of small business owners who are preparing plant-based foods. And so, for example, if we're doing a cooking program or a pop-up, we may be able to serve, 100 or 100 people. But if we're able to create 20 plant-based food entrepreneurs who have plant-based food products that they also can sell and contribute to the community, we begin to exponentially increase our ability to have an impact by producing more plant-based foods and more opportunities for people to eat and become familiar with plant-based foods. So we've started working on the food studio, still in the fundraising stage. We've been working on this for several years now. And as you know, with any sort of, real estate development or capital development, it's an up and down journey.
Yeah.
But we're coming close, we believe, and hopefully, in the near future, we'll be able to make that a reality. But we have been working with those food entrepreneurs and those plant-based food entrepreneurs by creating programs, doing work with them, helping them build capacity with their businesses through some grants
Mhm.
that we've been able to generate. So we're not waiting on the building to be built, but we are starting with working with the entrepreneurs first and foremost.
That's amazing. Yeah, so it's kind of a food incubator and
Correct.
plant-based accelerator. Um, your work bridges public health, culinary arts, entrepreneurship, community development. I am very much a systems thinker, and I think all of these should come under one umbrella. But I know you believe they
Yes,
belong together,
definitely.
and why are people treating them separately, and how can we get people to sort of see how all of this goes hand in hand?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, as they say. I'm not 100% sure. I think some of it has been because of some of the advertising and nefarious tactics over the years by, big food and the big food
Yeah.
industry. I mean, I think it's no secret, that, ultra processed food and ultra processed food manufacturers do actively, market and advertise. And I think that, that has helped to kind of create the division between, food and health. I think the other thing is a lot simpler and just sort of innate in us as human beings. No matter what the food is, I don't think we as human beings ever think any food is going to be bad for us, right?
Hmm.
It may have some, consequences, but I don't think we ever think that if we eat, a bag of potato chips or a bag of Cheetos or some cookies, that it's ever going to cause, a deep level of harm, right? Because it's a long term, right? If you eat one cookie, no deal. But if you eat a lifetime of cookies, there's
Yeah,
some problems.
that's a
So
long-term
I think it's
habit.
that immediate consequence versus the immediate gratification. I think that's probably the biggest thing that causes the separation between them.
Right. And you've often described what you're doing plant-based choices as sort of an economic and community development strategy as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
Um, what do you mean by that?
Yes, I mean, I think, in order to buy, fresher, healthier food, sometimes it is a little bit more expensive, depending on where you're at. And so you have to have dollars to buy that food. And so
Hmm.
for us, it's a couple of things. I think one, and we work with primarily, African Americans and people of color in our programs. I think that the biggest thing is that the more food entrepreneurs that we create that look like the people that are in the communities, where people are suffering these health disparities, the better it's going to be. One of the challenges that I think is unique to, let's say, African Americans as we've come to this country and the way in which we came to this country is that we've never been 100% in control of our food systems, right? So when we first arrived, we were given, food to eat, which was often sort of leftovers or scraps. And even now in many neighborhoods, we don't control distribution. We don't control food manufacturing. We don't control grocery stores. And so I think by creating these food entrepreneurs, our goal is that maybe sometime in the future, maybe far beyond the time that I'm gone, that the seeds that we're planting of entrepreneurship, food-based entrepreneurship, could ultimately grow one day into, a food system that is more supportive of communities of color and that is manufactured and ran and supported, by food producers who are also of color.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, in Reaping What She Sows, I write about the issue of getting land access for
Mm.
African American farmers who have been systematically stripped of millions and millions of acres of land. So there's the land, as you're saying, there's the distribution, but really, like what you're talking about, the ownership, and then controlling what you eat too, not being controlled by sort of processed food and big food and processed food is all of that is I do see as part of one whole system that, we have to attack. I'm wondering if this is why, because it kind of seems like Atlanta is a hotbed for African American plant-based,
Mm.
plant-forward cooking. Am
Yes.
I right about that? And do you think that has to do with part of this whole food sovereignty and gaining control,
Mhm.
where, historically you haven't had control before?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think also unique to Atlanta, many, many years ago, there were several institutions, plant-based and vegan and vegetarian institutions that started here first. One of them, unfortunately, just recently called. It was called Soul Vegetarian, and they've been in business for, I believe, 30 something plus years, if not more. And so I think because Atlanta was such a mecca for African Americans, for decades, when that plant based started here in Atlanta, and a lot of it did start here. They were all kind of centralized in an area at that time, kind of known as the West End. So I think from that, it just sort of grew, over the years, and the level of consciousness around eating better and being more respectful for your communities also grew, over the years. And I think that's why it had become or has become, sort of a hotbed for, those types of things. I also think number two that, African American entrepreneurship in general in Atlanta is very popular, and a lot of people come here,
Mm-hmm.
to Atlanta, to become entrepreneurs. And I think that is also seen in other areas of business as well. So I think it's natural that we would also see it in the plant-based business space.
Right, of course. That's very powerful that you have these things
Yeah.
converging in Atlanta.
Yes.
So I want to just get to money because, of course, money is always investment, is always the
Mm.
kind of key issue. So if you were able to talk to philanthropists, investors, policymakers too, and
Mm.
tell them how they can accelerate healthier and more equitable food systems in food
Mhm.
deserts like this part of
Yes.
Atlanta, where would you tell them they should invest first and why?
I think the first thing I would say is I have a belief that every foundation institution that has an interest in improving humanity in any kind of way, I think they should have some level of their portfolio or their grants or whatever in food, right? Because food is such a fundamentally important thing, and I think we often overlook the power of food, right? Food literally, we wouldn't be here without it, So I think that at some level, every organization should be engaged in food. I would suggest that they start with organizations that are in their respective backyards or communities, and start with, I think, helping to kind of rebuild or build the concept or educate people around the concept of food systems. I think we have a lot over the years. We've had a lot of interest and a lot of input and engagement around what I would call transactional food distribution, and that would be soup kitchens, food banks, things of that nature. And I think people are very familiar, with those things. But the challenge with those is that, people eat the food, they consume it, but the system that produced the problem hasn't changed, right? Yeah. And so I think, I think investing more in systems level work is going to produce better returns than just merely investing in feeding people. Yes, it is important to feed people. We definitely want to continue, feeding people and meeting that need. I think that's a fundamental right for people to eat. But I do think that we do need to start spending significantly more money and time investing and addressing the system, because the system is what's producing the problems, for individuals that relates to food.
Right. Okay. So say in 10 years you had that kind of system investment and development, and what does success look for you if you did get that kind of system support?
Yes. I think, specifically for Urban Oak and myself, being in the South, in the Southeast, I think that for us, it would be to, have established ourselves as sort of the one of the main entities leading the charge for healthier eating and healthier food systems in the South. One of the challenges that I've noticed over the last couple of years is that, in the Northeastern United States and the Western United States, there's a lot of work around food systems. There's a lot of organizations that deal with food systems. There are several, healthier food options. But when it comes to the South, and even specifically with Georgia, we're unfortunately still lagging behind. When you look at statistics around obesity, chronic illnesses, and things of that nature, and the states where those chronic illnesses are the highest, they're still in the South, right? So the South is still suffering disproportionately from, what I would just call, not as healthy eating. So I think for us to be in a position where, we have made a significant impact in educating everyone in the South about the importance of addressing this food system work, and then addressing, the issue around eating healthier, in the South, where the predominant number of African Americans still to this day live, So I think that would be, a successful sort of marker for us, is to be in that position where, we're well known for providing that type of leadership and thought leadership.
Yeah, I can attest to that in my own reporting too, because I've been to so many incredible farms and food systems in the Northeast that are predominantly white that are doing really well and do have a lot of investment. But when I was in Albany, Georgia, and talking to Shirley Sherrod, they've been talking about this food hub and this, grocery center, and it's just so hard to get the political will and the funding. So I totally get what you're up against.
It's funny. I know I used to work with Shirley Sherrod many years ago.
Really?
I used to work with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. That was one of my first jobs when I graduated college. Yeah. And she's 100% right. I mean, I don't want to say it's impossible, but that's one of the challenges we've had, even with raising funds for the Food Studio project, just not a lot of interest.
Right. And it's amazing as the Federation of Southern Cooperatives is. I mean, that's an incredible organization. Still these structural odds go on. So Kevin, I'm so sorry. Chef Kevin, I should say. I'm so sorry we're running out of time, but where can people find you on social media?
So they can reach me on Instagram at Chef Kev Official. They can reach us online at urbanoakfood.org.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for the opportunity.
Have a great day. All right. Bye-bye, Kevin. Bye-bye.